WNST ball-related activities around here, whether it's been Orioles baseball and spring training and a lot of Wizards and Caps and, of course, the Terps and the Big Ten and bracketology. But football is never lagging behind for activity, and Wednesday was a grand example of that. Our very own Luke Jones was as busy as I can remember him after 4 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon when no baseball was involved. Luke, a tampering, non-tampering, pre-free agency, whatever it is, a floodgate of Ravens news on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Since this 2-day window of, quote, legal tampering was instituted in this current collective bargaining agreement, it's really taken a lot of the drama out of the official start. You always hear the start of the new league year, 4 p.m. on, this year, March 9th. It's been right around this time most years. But you knew that once they instituted a window where teams and agents could talk, even though they couldn't technically finalize deals, that it would change how this stuff gets reported. And lo and behold, Wednesday, a day before the official start of the free agent signing period, plenty of activity. Ravens lose players, Ravens cut players, and late Wednesday night, Ravens start adding some players, and it all adds up to a big bowl of activity and a very busy WNST.net tech service.
All right, let's start with the goings, and then we'll talk about the comings, right? So the goings. Rick Wagner was sort of first off the market. Dukas later in the day, and, of course, Juszczyk in the middle. None of this is shocking to you and I. It's only the only sort of news is who the suitor would be, right, and what their needs would be. Certainly Juszczyk sort of broke the bank, right?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by Juszczyk. He's the one of their big three that I kind of figured had there was a reasonable chance of him coming back. And look, the fact that he made the Pro Bowl was going to change that. I think it's clear, and I remember you and I sitting in Houston talking to Daryl Johnston about how the fullback the last few years after the longest time where it looked like Bonte Leach, when the Ravens showed him the door and they bring in Juszczyk, you kind of talked about the fullback being a dead position, and we know Juszczyk isn't a traditional fullback, but when you see that he's reportedly getting a 4-year, $21 million contract with $10.5 million guaranteed, I mean, that's, I forget who, I think it was Evan Silva, tweeted out that that would make him the 9th highest paid running back in the NFL. That just kind of shows you how crazy the 49ers, maybe Kyle Shanahan has some special plans for how he's going to use Juszczyk in San Francisco. But he's the one guy that I figured there might be a chance of the Ravens bringing him back, but I certainly can't fault them for not coming close to wanting to pay him that. Rick Wagner, I think the writing had been on the wall for a while now, and when you see what he is reportedly getting from the Detroit Lions, somewhere in the neighborhood of $9 million per season, and you look at the right tackle position.
He's not worth $9 million to the Ravens, right?
Well, I mean, it comes down to this. You have plenty of teams with, another record cap increase, more than $10 million from the year before. You have plenty of teams with space to, money to spend. And when you look at the right tackle position, typically, and we're not talking Lane Johnson here in Philadelphia. Everyone knows he's going to be moved to left tackle, so you kind of throw his salary out. But all the other highest paid right tackles in the league were in that neighborhood of $6 million per year. So this is very similar to what happened last year with Kelechi Osemele, where the Raiders just completely blew everything out of the water as far as what you knew to be the going rate for top guard money. And they gave Osemele that much, while the Lions, appear poised to give Rick Wagner that kind of money. Again, I completely understand it. I get it. I think it's going to be tough to replace him because you don't have a logical in-house replacement unless, I don't think anyone thinks James Hurst is that guy. They have a couple young tackles in Stefan Nembot and DeAndre Wesley that they've stashed on IR this past season. Both carry some intrigue. Not ready to say either one of those guys is an answer, but I know those are at least two persons of interest to keep an eye on in the spring and summer, in addition to anyone else they might bring in.
Well, this is thought to be a thin draft at O-line from all accounts.
And that's another reason why Wagner ended up getting the money he's getting. why you're going to see some other tackles. And look, Rick Wagner's an above-average right tackle, but he's not a Pro Bowler. I mean, he hasn't been to this point. Maybe he will be.
I mean, look, I like Rick Wagner, but he's not some road grader. He's not John Ogden, for crying out loud.
Right. But but that said, you then run into the problem if you're the Ravens. You got to replace him. And I mean, this is the problem that they've had, and we've talked about it, and we'll continue to talk about it, regardless of who they sign here in the next few days. It's still going to be the big story going into the draft and going into the season, quite frankly, because they're going to have some question marks. Every team does. And when you're 8-8 and counting on older players, and if some of those older players retire, like Steve Smith, or you lose a Zach Orr, I mean, there are a lot of question marks. But I do understand that you aren't going to break the bank to keep a right tackle, but you got to find a guy to replace him. So, not surprised whatsoever there. Vlad Dukas, I mean, the report is he's getting a 3-year deal in Buffalo. We'll see what the terms look like, but I didn't think he was someone that was going to be in play for the Ravens to bring back anyway. Wasn't going to start. You want to go cheaper and younger as your backup offensive lineman, and he struggled. I mean, it was clear that the Ravens needed.
He wasn't the answer. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was a placeholder because they had to shift Marshall Yanda to the left side, and they felt he was better equipped than Ryan Jensen or John Urschel to play right guard, I suppose. But that to me, that wasn't anything of real note. So those are their Wednesday losses, even though they don't become official anyway until the signing period begins and everything becomes finalized. But can't say that any of those names are major shock. I am shocked by the amount of money that Kyle Juszczyk's getting. Good for him. You wish him good luck. Good player, good fullback, but losing Kyle Juszczyk, hardly a game changer. You got to allocate those resources towards more pressing needs, and you trust that they can find a fullback in the last couple rounds of the draft or undrafted. I mean, that's a position that if you scout, you should be able to find a guy that can at least serve as a blocker. Now, his receiving ability out of the backfield, that's something that's a loss. But on the flip side, then you see the Ravens reportedly signing Danny Woodhead late Wednesday night, veteran, third down back, has had some injuries. There's no doubt there.
I'm always a Danny Woodhead fan. You'll never hear me say anything negative about him. I didn't even when he was beating us.
Well, I mean, he when he's healthy and look, I mean, you're hoping that there's not you're assuming there's not a significant financial commitment because he missed 14 games last year with the torn ACL. A few years back had the broken fibula and only played three games. But this is the prototypical kind of third down back. I mean, Darren Sproles and Danny Woodhead have kind of been the prototypes for that kind of a role. A guy that can motion out to the slot, can catch passes out of the backfield. Based on what I've read from and wasn't so familiar about him to know his blocking ability, seems like he's okay in blitz pickup for a guy his size. That's something that the Ravens are going to miss with Juszczyk because Kenneth Dixon and Terrence West are below average in that department. So, it seems like not that that's obviously not a straight-on one-for-one trade-off, but certain things that Kyle Juszczyk did, Danny Woodhead from a receiving standpoint might be able to give them some of that, and obviously a different body type, more speed, certainly not physical by any means, but we'll kind of see how this works out. I mean, the Ravens, losing some big pieces, no doubt, but clearly...
and still are going to lose more, by the way.
Oh, they're going to lose more, and we'll see how it plays out with, we know all the names, we've talked about them, but, the other, the biggest name that they added, or at least were moving toward adding late Wednesday night, according to ESPN, Tony Jefferson, strong safety from Arizona, excellent against the run.
Undrafted, by the way, when I looked him up. I didn't remember his name coming through the draft. Undrafted.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, if you read how he profiles, I mean, this isn't Ed Reed. I mean, who is? But he's not a ball hawk. He is outstanding against the run. It sounds like he's very capable in pass coverage. It sounds like, to me, and this was just my first blush reaction, that Tony Jefferson is what the Ravens hoped they were getting when they drafted Matt Elam 4 years ago. Ironically enough, he was undrafted the same year. So,
well, you know what's interesting to me, and you know, I haven't talked to anyone about this. Exchanged a few texts in and around the organization on Wednesday night, but Tony Jefferson, they picked him out. You know what I mean? So this is really like very, very unusual, Luke, that they're preemptive in this way, right? Like, and preemptive with a guy who, you know, I think he's not getting $50 million, right? I mean, you know.
But he's going to get real money. I mean, I mean, we'll see what the terms look like. But, you know, this is a 25-year-old safety who was, you know, there were other teams coming hard after him, including the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
You know, the reports were out that he took, you know, he left money on the table to, you know, with the Browns to sign with the Ravens. So,
you know, I was talking to the guys from Cleveland. I had Darryl Ryder on earlier, and also talking to Munch Bishop earlier this week. I'm like, just because Cleveland has the most amount of money doesn't mean that people are going to want to sign there. You know, and this is, you know, we're not even out of this shit. I had Gary Baxter on the show earlier this week, you know, talking about his twisted trail to Cleveland from here. And, you know, in his case, he got hurt, right? He got hurt quickly. He said it was a couple of $1 million difference. And at this point in his life, he's happy to have that money versus not having that money. And I think these are, you know, we talk about Melo Trimble as well, you know, was pointed out to me by John Crispin. Well, hey, he'll make $500,000 next year, or he can come back and play for free. That doesn't sound, you know, no one else in the world would go back and play for free. No one else in the world would leave money on the table. But here, apparently, he's a kid that left some money on the table by all reports, right?
Yeah, and again, how much? And you know as well as anyone, you can structure a deal. You know, the total money. You know, that means so little. You know, what do the guarantees look like? You know,
but usually when the leak goes in that direction, it's reflective of, I didn't want to play in Cleveland.
Oh, sure. No doubt.
And I don't think you'll be the only guy that says, I don't really want your money there, Hugh. Sorry. You know?
Well, they need to, you know, with the players that they have and with all the draft picks that they have, you know, they need to just make progress. You know, and there's no, I mean, I guess they could go 0-16. I mean, they did get that one win this past year. But in the case of Tony Jefferson, I mean, you know, it's clear, and the report was even out there earlier in the day, Wednesday afternoon, that, you know, that the Browns were offering him a ton, but there are other teams in play. When you hear that, that's coming from the agent, and that's a clear signal to say, we don't want to sign there. I mean, that's just, you know, you just read the tea leaves. But, you know, in the case of Jefferson, it's, you know, second straight year the Ravens are making a pretty significant financial commitment at the safety position. And, you know, we talked about this. A lot of this has to do with covering their tracks on failed draft picks in Elam and Terrence Brooks and, yeah, other mid-level signings like, you know...
well, Elam would have been up for money right now. If he turned into Ed Reed, they'd have to figure out a way to get him $8 million, right?
Yeah. But, you know, other signings like Kendrick Lewis and, you know, even though Darian Stewart went on to big things in Denver, didn't really show that here in Baltimore for whatever reason. So it's clear that the Ravens have made it's clear they're making a commitment to improve that secondary, and I think, you know, based on things that I've heard from the organization since the end of the year, it's clear that they feel they've identified the need, that they need to invest more there. That's why. Well,
they targeted a guy. I mean, and that's really. Tell me the last time they targeted somebody like this in
Eric Weddle. I mean, they did it with Weddle last year. I mean, that's and Weddle was, you know, relatively early. I think first couple of days of free agency. So, you know, it's clear that they're trying to revamp that secondary. It's why I think they're absolutely going to be looking to take a corner early. I don't think you're going to see them continue their streak of not taking a corner before day 3, which, you know, the last time they did that was Jimmy Smith back in 2011. I think you're going to see them take a corner in the first couple rounds. They might take more than one corner in the first few rounds, depending on how it shakes out. But, you know, Jefferson's clearly someone that they have visions of pairing with Eric Weddle, and I'm guessing this means the end of Ladarius Webb. Certainly at his cap figure would mean the end. I mean, if he wants to take a pay cut and, you know, be some kind of a situational player, you know, maybe there's a scenario for that. But it's clear that they have visions of pairing Jefferson and Weddle. And the interesting thing, Nestor, Jefferson, a San Diego native. Go back a couple weeks ago, Eric Weddle actually tweeted to him about the possibility of playing in Baltimore, and it's clear those two had a relationship, and from what I understand, Weddle was recruiting him.
I would think Danny Woodhead also would be a guy who had some real ties to Jarrett Johnson and ties to Rex Ryan and ties in and around the Ravens through the years, as well as with Eric Weddle.
Yeah, so I even joked, is Eric Weddle the new GM? Maybe not the GM, but it seems like he's kind of taken over or taken a role of being a top recruiter. And
Luke, we need more good football players around here, right?
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, clearly, Woodhead at 32 years old. I mean, to me, that's this is kind of you hope there's not a lot of financial risk because this is a guy who has struggled to stay on the field, but he's proven to be a nice asset for an offense, no doubt. And in the case of Jefferson, you're hoping that at age 25, you're hoping you're getting a guy that's going to be an anchor for you. Doesn't mean he's going to become a Pro Bowl player, but you're hoping he, for whatever the money is an above-average talent. Was I think fifth in Pro Football Focus's grading system for the safety position this past year. So the guy can play. He played quite well in Arizona the last couple of years. So you're hoping he brings that to Baltimore and just makes that secondary that much better. And with his ability against the run, you wonder if the Ravens prioritize that a little bit more, knowing that they lost Zach Orr to the unfortunate retirement, and maybe a guy that's going to play closer to the line of scrimmage at times. Could even see him in a role where maybe he lines up. They play a little bit of dime, and he plays a little dime linebacker. Who knows? But it seems like he's a guy that has some versatility that they're going to really try to use him to revamp that secondary and help out the run defense as well.
I was going to say they're moving on up with Mr. Jefferson, but I didn't know if you got that reference or
not. I got it.
I didn't know if you watched Jefferson.
I was the tail end of remembering that, but I certainly remember.
Well, the smart aleck in me back. If this happened back in the '90s, I would have found the Jefferson's theme song. I'd be rolling that right now and talking about George and Wheezy. But George and Wheezy are part of hip hoptionary now, right? I mean, they're immortalized in many rap songs. So the Jefferson lives on. So, hey, we got a Jefferson here, Tony Jefferson. I Googled up on him, and that's one of those things there, too, where, Arizona groomed a guy, found a guy. This keeps happening to the Ravens in the case of the Rick Wagners and perhaps Brandon Williams, and it happened in the case of Torrey Smith a couple years ago, who might be coming back now. There's plenty of surprises around the corner, right? I mean, it's not a dull moment in any of this. The next couple of days, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, there's so many different things that can happen, and I talked to you about this quite a bit. I mean, I was not of the opinion that this team should be just tweaking a little bit. I think this team does need to shake some things up. They need to try to get younger, and we saw the decision to cut Elvis Dumervil on Wednesday, not unexpected, but a difficult decision given what he meant to that locker room, given how much of a stand-up professional he was, given how good he was a couple years ago, and how the Ravens were missing that this past year. I mean, clearly, when he was on the field, wasn't the same player. Can't fault them whatsoever at a cap figure of over $8 million that he was scheduled to hold this year. I can't fault them for moving on. I think that was expected. We'll see who else. The indications that they're trying to get Dennis Pitta to take a pay cut, and we already mentioned Webb. We've talked about who knows what will happen with Jeremy Zuda. Ben Watson. There's there are a lot of changes that could still be coming. You mentioned Torrey Smith. If the Ravens work something out there, what does that mean for Mike Wallace? Would they sign Torrey Smith at a cheaper rate and presumably not pick up Mike Wallace's option with an idea that you're essentially trading out Wallace for Smith? And
it's like a mass exodus, man. I mean, it's we've been talking for 8 weeks, 10 weeks about this, man. I mean, this is the business of the National Football League, and these couple of days, you really do have your head on a swivel, not just in Baltimore, literally everywhere. At least we, don't have general managers not going to the combine, and the circus that they're running down there in the DC Beltway, right?
Yeah, it's. As much as the Ravens have had their issues and as much as the Ravens need to improve, and I like to see shaking up the roster, I would rather see them be more bold than not at this point. You can't afford to be in love with your own players, and we've seen that, and clearly this is going to be a huge draft for them. You do see what's happening in D.C. right now with that situation, which is just, just astonishing to me, but maybe it shouldn't be given what's happened
It's
there.
2017. Just lie to the people, man. Just lie and lie and lie some more, and in the end, what are they going to do about it anyway, right?
Yeah. But, in the meantime, the Ravens, they still plenty of work to be done, still much improvement needs to be made if they want to get back to where they're accustomed to being. But Wednesday was certainly, we saw Tuesday Sharice Wright and Kendrick Lewis get shown the door. No surprise there with either of those individuals, but certainly Wednesday provided a more dramatic shakeup, and I think we're going to be seeing much more shaking up here over the next few days, and it will continue here into the next, next week, the next couple weeks, and then into the draft. So I mean,
it was a work day on Wednesday. It's going to be a work day on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, and they're going to be busy out there as we predicted. And nobody's better at it, right? I mean, we do know that part of it. They're not going to screw up the semantics or miss the deadline or not get the card in or do what whatever the hell the Broncos did that landed Elvis Dumervil here. The Ravens don't make those kind of clerical mistakes and whatnot. So they're pretty buttoned up over there. They know what they're doing. I mean, I'll say that much. There's no question that there's any bumbling going on. The question would be, are they making good decisions or not? And sticking their neck out for the Tony Jeffersons of the world. And meanwhile, the Lions are sticking their neck out on a $9 million right tackle, and the 49ers are sticking their neck out on basically an H-back, right? So, there's plenty of investment being made, and all these teams trying to figure out these quarterbacks, Luke. That's really the big story here over the weekend is who's going to wind up in what seat from the quarterbacking position, I think.
Yeah, Tony Romo being cut loose, and, the Bears talking about Mike Glennon, which, he's someone that, I'll admit a few years ago I was interested in.
I'll take Joe Flacco.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that, a couple years ago it's like, okay, maybe he's a maybe. But, when you look at what the Bears might be paying him, it's all crazy. And, many of these deals that we're hearing about here over the next couple of days are going to be the ones that teams are regretting 2 years from now. And, as much as we're talking about Tony Jefferson now, you hope the Ravens aren't talking about cutting him 2 years from now. But you just don't know. It's just, it is very, very unpredictable. And, we talk about it all the time. Ultimately, championship teams are built through the draft. Maybe the Broncos being that rare exception a couple years ago, but for the Ravens to make the kind of meaningful improvement that they need to make, to me, it's still going to come down to way more their last couple draft classes stepping forward and this 2017 draft being a home run for them. I think that's going to be a bigger key than anyone they're going to sign or let go or trade for here over the next couple weeks.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. And, of course, we're monitoring the Orioles, who were on some television earlier, which was nice on Wednesday. And getting into the weekend, Big Ten tournament. I'll be down in D.C. on Friday night for the Terps. And, of course, the Caps and the Wizards keeping us up late. And it's like the Wizards can't stop winning. All they do is win, the Washington Wizards. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And as Luke pointed out, and if you're on the WNST tech service, you know how good it is. It was like a pinball machine or a Vegas casino on Wednesday afternoon. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday. He'll drive you home, get you ready for the weekend. There's changes, as David Bowie would say, throughout the National Football League. We're monitoring all of it in real time out on Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. If you love the Ravens, our trip to London is going to be fantastic. We got space available for you. Go to the road trips tab at WNST.net. And we just finalized the fact that Barry Trotz, head coach of the Washington Capitals, will be joining us on Monday, March 20th at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. We're going to rock our red up in Carroll County. We've had the coach up in Harford County. We're going to take up to Carroll County. Those of you on the north and the west, come on out, say hello to head coach Trotz and rock your red with the Caps. Get swabbed for the Bone Marrow Registry. That is Monday, March the 20th. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.